Deep in the woods, a guy named Joe is terrified and running for his life from a mysterious figure chasing him. Joe trips and falls, and the stranger catches up to him. It turns out the mysterious figure is a vampire, and he immediately starts drinking Joe's blood. Suddenly, the sun comes up, and the vampire burns alive, turning into a pile of ashes. But Joe's hand also gets burned, which means he's becoming a vampire too. He starts moving slowly without being seen and hides in the shadows of the trees until he reaches a place filled with firewood. He covers himself with a blanket he finds there and runs toward a shed next to a nearby house while feeling himself slowly transforming. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Stan is sitting in his nice house having breakfast with his mom and dad. Suddenly, a glass falls to the floor, and his mother turns into a very sick woman while the whole house atmosphere becomes terrifying and hopeless. Then his father appears holding a gun and pulls the trigger right in front of his son's eyes. At that moment, Stan wakes up in his small, modest house and remembers that both of his parents are dead and that he now lives with his grandfather, Ailys, a former soldier who treats him harshly and insists that Stan call him sir. If Stan even thinks about ignoring him once, his grandfather threatens him and slams him against the wall while constantly complaining about kids these days. Stan heads to school, and we discover that the shed Joe hid in is actually behind Grandpa Ailys' house. While Stan is riding his bike, the gang that bullies him at school speeds past him trying to knock him over. He barely avoids them, but because of all the chaos they cause, he crashes into Sheriff Dorney's police car. The sheriff is very understanding, but her deputy is furious, especially since Stan is about to turn 18, meaning he won't be treated as a minor anymore and won't get any second chances. At school, Stan's best friend, Dahmer, overhears the gang talking trash about Stan, so he immediately insults them back. Marble, Pete, and Ozzy get furious, and a fight breaks out in the middle of the street. Stan and Roxy quickly step in to stop it, and Stan is just about to punch one of them before a teacher arrives, breaks up the fight, and sends everyone back to class. After school, Dahmer tells Stan he's sick of everything and that one day he's going to snap and kill every single member of that gang. He also complains about Roxy, who used to be part of their group, but now prefers hanging out with the popular girls. Even so, Stan is still in love with her. When Stan gets home from school, he hides upstairs and looks through pictures of his parents while listening to sad emo music. He cuts his arm with a knife trying to numb the pain, then throws the knife perfectly at a target. A moment later, Grandpa Ailys calls him outside to cut the grass in the yard. As Stan walks out, the dog starts barking toward the shed, but Stan doesn't realize it's actually a warning. He goes into the shed looking for the lawn mower, and while searching through the clutter, he finds a set of teeth lying on a table. Suddenly, Joe jumps out from his hiding spot and tries to attack him. Terrified, Stan accidentally opens a window, and the burning sunlight stops Joe from getting any closer. Stan runs outside to get the dog, thinking the man he saw is just some drug addict. He yells at Joe to come out, and when he doesn't respond, Stan sends the dog into the shed after him. At that moment, Stan hears his dog screaming, and then its head gets thrown out of the shed. Terrified, Stan runs back into the house to grab a knife, but Grandpa Ailys shows up yelling at him. Stan quickly tells him what happened to the dog and about the stranger who broke into the property. Ailys calls for the dog to make sure Stan is telling the truth, then heads outside to confront the intruder despite Stan, insisting they should wait for the police first. The old man is horrified when he sees his dog dead. He hands his cane to Stan before walking into the shed with a wooden stick, fully ready to kill whoever is inside. After a few minutes of silence, Ailys calls out to Stan and tells him there's nobody inside except the dog's body. Suddenly, a horrifying scream fills the entire place. Stan tries to help his grandfather, but Joe drags Ailys deeper into the shed and slams the door shut to finish him off. Completely terrified, Stan wraps the dog's chain around the door to keep it locked while blood sprays out from underneath the wooden door. After that, he runs back into the house and drinks one of his grandfather's beers to calm himself down, even though he normally never drinks. Stan thinks about calling the police, but he's already under suspicion, and he's scared they might blame him for what happened because of his family's dark past and what happened to his parents. So instead, he focuses on sealing the shed tightly to make sure Joe can't escape and hurt anyone else. That night, someone tries to open Stan's bedroom door. Thinking it might be his grandfather, Stan walks out of his room, but nobody is there. The power is out, and he hears his grandfather calling his name. He goes to check Elie's room, but suddenly hears the voice behind him even though no one is there. Then the whispering starts coming from downstairs. Stan follows the sound until he reaches the glowing shed, where the voice becomes much clearer. He prepares himself to open the door, but the voice suddenly screams that Stan wanted him dead from the beginning. Then Stan suddenly wakes up and realizes it was all just another nightmare. The next day at school, Roxy tries talking to Stan, but Marble interrupts and asks her to help him with homework. Roxy knows Stan hates seeing her hang out with Marble because of the way he acts, but she admits she only does it so she can survive senior year without getting bullied. Stan believes choices like that won't just affect school, they'll follow her for the rest of her life. Later, Stan tries telling Roxy what happened to Grandpa Ailes, but Dahmer interrupts them, which annoys Stan enough to walk away alone. As Dahmer leaves school, the gang starts insulting him, and he flips them off in response. Furious, the three of them begin chasing him. Back at the house, Stan notices the shed door shaking violently, so he grabs a baseball bat and slowly walks toward it. Suddenly, Joe punches a hole through the door, grabs Stan by the throat, and forces him to look at his horrifying face. But when the sunlight starts burning Joe's hand, Stan manages to break free, and Joe retreats back into hiding. Right then, Dahmer shows up bleeding and starts yelling at Stan for abandoning him. Stan cuts him off and explains that Ailes and the dog are dead and that there's a monster inside the shed. Dahmer doesn't believe him, so Stan agrees to show him. But first, he grabs materials to block the hole in the door. Suddenly, Dahmer hears someone calling his name, and when he walks toward the voice, Joe appears behind the door. Stan rushes to seal the opening while Dahmer helps him. After that, Dahmer gets excited because he thinks they could use the monster to kill the gang that's been tormenting them. But Stan sees the idea as evil and completely insane, and he refuses to let Dahmer kill anyone. That night, Stan goes to sleep holding a knife while watching an old vampire movie to learn their weaknesses. He discovers that vampires burn in sunlight and can be killed by destroying their black hearts or cutting off their heads. Suddenly, a sexy woman from a poster on the wall comes to life and climbs on top of Stan, trying to seduce him. But she suddenly transforms into a horrifying vampire and bites him. Stan wakes up in panic from the nightmare, and while searching for his shoes, he looks under the bed and sees the vampire again, but it turns out to be another nightmare. Furious, Stan tears the poster off the wall. Then he climbs onto the roof of the shed and starts cutting holes in it so sunlight can hit Joe, but there's still enough shadow left for Joe to hide in. Later, Sheriff Dorney comes by to ask Stan about Ailes. Stan tells her he went out, but Dorney finds that suspicious because Ailes' truck is still parked outside. Stan swears he doesn't know where he went and blames the old man's drinking habits. Dorney explains that the family living at the start of the road found all their rabbits slaughtered, so Ailes went looking for whoever did it and never came back. When she shows Stan a picture of the man, Stan recognizes him but lies and says he's never seen him before. Dorney starts suspecting he's hiding something and insists on driving him to school herself. While Stan is getting ready, she notices Ailes' cane lying on the floor. At school, Roxy becomes worried about Stan's injuries, but the moment is ruined by a rude comment from Marble. Stan defends her, but Marble mocks him and says he could steal Roxy from him while insulting her at the same time. Stan completely loses control, beats Marble to the ground, and starts punching him as hard as he can until a teacher pulls him away. The teacher tells them the school was preparing for a meeting with Ailes, but since nobody could reach him by phone, they sent Sheriff Dorney to go get him. Terrified for the sheriff's safety, Stan runs out of school to stop her, without noticing that Marble is secretly following him. At Ailes' house, Dorney rings the doorbell, but nobody answers. Then she hears noises coming from the shed and walks over to investigate. She's startled by the loud banging from behind the door, and then she hears Ailes' voice calling for help. She shoots the lock off the door, but before she can open it, Stan arrives. Dorney points her gun at him, and Stan desperately tries to explain that the thing inside the shed is Joe, not Ailes, but she refuses to believe him. Then Sheriff Dorney opens the door to try to save Ailes, but Joe suddenly jumps on her, biting her in the neck. He forces her arm upward, so she fires her shots into the air, then tears through her arm before dragging her toward the shed to feed on her. When it's over, Marble suddenly appears and starts attacking Stan. After a few punches and kicks, he pulls out a brass knuckle to finish it, but he freezes when he hears a gunshot. Dahmer is the one who fired, using Dorney's weapon to force Marble to back down. Stan tries to calm him, but Dahmer has completely lost it and threatens to kill Stan too if he interferes. Then he humiliates Marble, who is forced to admit he's a coward, before Dahmer throws him into the shed, ignoring all of Stan's warnings. At first Marble moves normally, but he starts panicking when he sees Dorney's arm on the ground. He begins apologizing and blaming everything on what happened at school, but Dahmer orders him into the shed anyway. Moments later, they hear Marble screaming as he's being torn apart inside. Stan gets furious and starts fighting Dahmer over the gun, shouting at him. But Marble's screams throw Stan into panic, and Dahmer knocks him out with the gun. Roxy then arrives looking for Stan but can't find him anywhere, while the shed door is wide open. She says she hasn't seen anyone around, but she starts freaking out when she notices an arm on the ground. Stan then enters the shed to investigate and finds Marble's brass knuckles lying there. In the darkness at the far end of the shed, he sees Marble standing, but then his dead body collapses, revealing that Dahmer has turned into a vampire. Dahmer explains that Joe has left for now, but he'll come back later to finish Stan off. He keeps talking wildly as he moves closer, not realizing that sunlight is starting to burn his body. Roxy sees him and screams, and Dahmer uses the moment to attack Stan, but Stan quickly drives a wooden stake into him and pushes his arm into the sunlight. Then he locks the shed door. Stan and Roxy hug for a moment, but they are shocked when Dahmer jumps back at them. He tries to apologize as the sunlight burns him to death. Stan runs to cover him with a sheet, but it's too late. Stan then tells Roxy everything that happened, and they prepare for the night. They place Dahmer's body in the shed, go inside the house, and lock all the doors and windows. They light a fire in the fireplace and start making wooden stakes and gathering as many knives as they can. Stan can't stop blaming himself for everything, but Roxy tells him he's not at fault. They end up comforting each other and hugging. As night falls, it's revealed that Joe has been hiding underground in the forest, and now he emerges. At the house, Pete and Ozzy knock on the door asking where Marble is. Stan and Roxy try to tell them to leave, but Ozzy gets nervous when he sees something moving in the dark and warns Pete, who keeps arguing. Suddenly, an arm shoots out of the darkness and drags Ozzy up to the roof, where he's devoured, his blood dripping down. Pete finally realizes the truth, and they have no choice but to let him in. At that moment, Joe cuts the power to the house. Stan thinks they're safe inside since all the doors are locked, but then he remembers they didn't secure the roof properly. Strange noises start coming from upstairs, so they go to investigate, each heading to a different room. Stan finds no intruder but discovers Ailey's gun. Roxy nervously checks under Stan's bed but finds nothing. Meanwhile, Pete finds an open window and rushes to close it without noticing broken glass on the floor. When he turns around, Ozzy, now a vampire, growls in his face. Roxy is then attacked and dragged onto the roof. Stan rushes to save her but finds himself blocked by Ozzy and Pete, both now turned into vampires. Stan runs into a room, locks the door with a chair, and searches for bullets while Pete breaks the door down with an axe. Once the gun is loaded, Stan shoots through the doorway, hitting both of them at once. Above, Joe is about to kill Roxy, but Stan arrives and opens fire. The first shot hits Joe's arm, but Stan can't fire again fast enough, and Joe grabs the gun from him. Stan swings an axe at Joe's shoulder, but he's thrown to the ground. Joe grabs the axe and charges to choke Stan, but Roxy picks up the gun and shoots Joe, forcing him off Stan. The bullet hits Joe's face, wounding him, but the gun runs out of ammo. Joe is about to attack Roxy, but Stan throws a knife at the last second. Joe blocks it, and the knife ends up stuck in Roxy's shoulder instead. Joe tries to choke Stan again, but Roxy grabs the axe and quickly decapitates him, ending the fight. After everything is over, they place all the bodies in the shed and burn them. In the morning, they wake up inside a car and realize they didn't properly close the trunk, and something inside is still moving, trying to get out. And that's the end of the movie. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, your opinion matters. Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.